Okay, let's unpack this one. Because today we are looking at a trajectory that, honestly, if you pitched this as a screenplay to a studio executive, they would probably just kick you out of the office for it being too perfectly constructed.
It really does feel written.
Yeah.
It has that very specific three-act structure
Yeah.
that fiction tries to emulate, but real life rarely actually achieves.
Exactly. We are taking a deep dive into the life of a man named Armando Valdez. And to give you, the listener, the sort of movie trailer version before we really get into the weeds, we are talking about a kid who starts out selling magazines for a dime on a dirt street corner in El Paso, Texas.
Right.
And he claws his way up to become a high-level cameraman and a war correspondent, like literally dodging bullets to cover the Tijuana cartels for major networks.
Which is a career peak that, most people would spend an entire lifetime trying to reach.
Right. But then, and this is the twist that makes this a deep dive rather than just a standard biography, he walks away.
He completely pivots.
He leaves the adrenaline, the prestige, the massive network salary, and he goes back to a dusty backyard in Fresno to teach neighborhood kids how to hold a camera.
It is a profound pivot.
Yeah.
And we are basing this whole discussion on a really fantastic piece of source material today. It's an interview titled Sabiduría Para Tu Día con Álvaro Martínez.
Wisdom for your day.
Yeah.
And frankly, there is just a lot of wisdom here. But I want to set the table for you before we start. This isn't just a simple man does good thing narrative. We really need to look at the mechanics of this life.
The structural barrier.
Exactly. We need to understand the technical skills he mastered, the specific sociological barriers he had to break through. And I'm talking about the mechanics of systemic racism in the 80s and 90s media landscape, and ultimately the psychology of that pivot.
Precisely. So we're going to structure this deep dive in roughly 4 movements. First, the roots. We have to go back to the Mexican Revolution era dynamics, orphans, the freight trains. Second, the climb. How you actually break into a closed industry that doesn't want you. Third, the danger. The brutal reality of reporting on the Arellano Felix cartel. And finally, the legacy. The founding of the Community Center for the Arts and Technology, or CCAT.
So let's start at ground zero, or really, before ground zero. Because Armando's story doesn't start with him at all. It starts with a survival instinct that seems almost dramatic at this point.
It starts with the father. And to really understand Armando, you have to understand the sheer physical toll of his father's childhood.
Right.
Armando's dad was an orphan from a tiny, tiny town called Palmito in Durango, Mexico.
And when we say orphan in that specific context, rural Mexico in the early 20th century, we aren't talking about foster care systems or social safety nets.
No, not at all. We are talking about absolute vulnerability.
Yeah.
Armando shares in the interview that his father, at the age of maybe 8 or 9, makes a decision that no child should ever have to make.
Yeah.
He decides he has to head north. He has to migrate just to survive. And he does this by riding La Bestia.
The beast, the freight trains.
Right. Now, we hear about migrants riding the trains today in the news, but imagine doing this decades ago as an 8-year-old, completely alone.
It's terrifying.
You are clinging to the top of a boxcar or the ladder on the side. The noise is deafening, just steel on steel.
Yeah.
The smoke, the total exposure to the elements.
And the geography there isn't forgiving. He's going from Durango up through the high deserts of Zacatecas all the way to Ciudad Juarez. That is hundreds and hundreds of miles of brutal terrain.
And it wasn't a quick trip. According to the interview, this journey took him nearly 4 years.
4 years.
He's stopping, begging for food, working where he can, hopping the next train. He is essentially growing up on the rails.
And there's a specific incident Armando recounts that really highlights the physical danger here. It's not just hunger, it's violence and horrific accidents.
Yes. Somewhere along that line, the vehicle or train car he was traveling in overturned.
Oh, wow.
It's a chaotic scene, and in that accident, his arm was severely injured. Armando describes it as being shattered or essentially pulled entirely out of the socket.
So now you have a preteen boy, arm dangling, completely alone in Ciudad Juarez, which is a really rough border city even back then.
And this is where we see the first instance of what I call transactional survival. He doesn't just beg. He finds a Chinese cafe.
Okay.
Now, this is an interesting historical detail because there was a significant Chinese immigrant population in northern Mexico at the time, often running small businesses.
Right. They were often fleeing persecution in the U.S. or coming for railroad work. So you have these two displaced populations intersecting right there at the border.
Exactly. So the father stands outside this cafe, literally starving. The owner, a Chinese businessman, sees him, But the father says, and this is the absolute key here, I will wash your windows if you give me something to eat.
He negotiates. He offers actual value.
He offers labor. The owner accepts. And that moment turns into a 2-year apprenticeship.
Wow.
The owner lets him sleep in a little back room. And in exchange, the boy washes windows. But he's also watching everything.
This is the informal education part of the story.
He learns plumbing. He learns electricity. He learns how to bake Mexican bread, oddly enough. He picks up these vital trades just by being in the environment and making himself useful. That versatility, being able to fix a pipe, wire a lamp, bake a loaf of bread, that becomes the family's primary currency later on.
It's the very definition of a jack of all trades. Now let's bring in the mother. She's from Coahuila, near Torreon.
Another incredibly hard-scrabbled background. She never spent a single day in school.
Not one.
Not because she didn't want to learn, but because she had to work to support 9 siblings. She was the absolute safety net for her entire family.
And when these two eventually meet and settle in El Paso, Texas, they are living in extreme poverty. Armando describes a tiny 2-room house. The bathroom is outside, like a literal outhouse situation.
Yeah.
But despite the lack of space, the mother continues this role of being a localized safety net for others.
There's a really vivid memory Armando has from when he was about 4 or 5. He calls it the burritos on the floor.
I made a note of this when I was reading the source. It sounds funny at first, but it's actually quite moving.
It really is. He talks about waking up in the middle of the night to use the bathroom outside. He steps out of bed, and the floor is just covered in these lump shapes wrapped in blankets. He has to carefully tiptoe over them. To a 4-year-old, they look like giant burritos.
But they were people.
They were migrants. People from his mother's hometown in Coahuila. They were heading north for agricultural work. And they knew that in this tiny, cramped house in El Paso, there was a safe floor and a warm meal.
It creates a fascinating normalization of hospitality. If you grow up stepping over strangers sleeping on your floor, you learn that your space is communal. You don't hoard your luck, you share it.
And you see that hustle in Armando immediately. At 4 years old, while his mom is on the corner selling menudo.
Which is a very labor-intensive tripe soup, right?
Exactly. It's a staple of Mexican hangover cures and Sunday mornings. So while she's selling that, Armando is right next to her.
Selling magazines.
A neighbor had given him a stack of old wrestling magazines, Lucha Libre stuff. And he's selling them for 10 cents a pop, maybe a quarter if it's a special edition. He's contributing to the household economy before he can even read the magazines properly.
But there is a very dark shadow hanging over this entire period, and that is the border itself. It's not just a line they crossed once. It's an active daily threat.
There is a traumatic story from the source about their migration further north. The family decides to leave El Paso for better opportunities, moving toward Denver and eventually California. They pile into this camper.
And they hit the checkpoint in Las Cruces, New Mexico.
Now, this is a pivotal moment in the family's history. The father realizes he has forgotten his wallet. In a modern context, for most people, that's just a massive inconvenience. In that context, for a Mexican man in the U.S. in that era, it's a total catastrophe. He has no ID.
The immigration agents detain him. But they tell the mother and the children to keep moving. They say, you go ahead, we'll sort this out.
Which is a terrifying directive to give a mother. The family drives on, waiting for him to catch up. They wait in Denver for days, no phone calls, no way to know if he's dead or alive.
What had actually happened at the checkpoint?
Violence. While detained, Armando's father witnessed the agents brutally beating an Oaxacan man. And true to his character, he couldn't just stand there and watch. He tried to intervene. He tried to stop the beating.
And for that, the agents turned on him.
They beat him severely. And here is the real cruelty of it. They didn't process him for formal deportation. They didn't put him on a bus back across the border. They threw him into the river. Battered, bloody. He was literally tossed back into Mexico like garbage.
That specific detail being thrown in the river, it just strips away all humanity. It's not a legal procedure. It's an act of disposal.
And it instilled a deep, paralyzing fear in him. Armando says his father didn't want to cross back into the U.S. for months. He was psychologically broken by that violence.
Yeah.
Eventually, he did return. But that trauma, the knowledge that authority figures could do that to you with absolutely no consequences, that stays in the family DNA.
It definitely shapes how they view institutions. So they eventually make it to California, bouncing from East LA, and finally landing in Fresno. And this brings us to what we're calling Section 2, the Spark. They settle in downtown Fresno, the San Pablo neighborhood.
This is the late 70s, early 80s. And we really need to paint the sensory picture of this neighborhood for you. It wasn't quite suburbia. Armando describes his alarm clock as the sound of screaming and running feet at 4 in the morning.
Border Patrol raids.
Every single morning. Immigration vans pulling up, people scattering, families being torn apart before the sun even came up. That is the ambient noise of his childhood. Constant instability.
But right in the middle of this chaos, he finds a window into another world. And it happens, oddly enough, on a school field trip to New Mexico.
He sees a peer, another kid, holding a movie camera. They're playing a game, Cowboys and Indians, standard fare for kids at the time. But Armando watches how the kid uses the camera. He sees the kid stop filming, move an arrow to a hit position on the other kid's chest, and then start filming again.
The jump cut.
The jump cut. The most basic fundamental edit in all of cinema. But to Armando, it was pure magic. He realized in that instant that reality could be manipulated. You could tell a story that wasn't happening in real time.
He goes home and he is just obsessed. He needs a camera. Now, the family is broke. They are barely making rent. But there was a catalog called Finger Hut.
Oh, Finger Hut. We definitely have to explain this to the younger listeners who might not know. Before Amazon, before credit cards were ubiquitous for the working class, there was Finger Hut. It was a mail-order catalog that sold everything from toasters to bedding to electronics.
But the business model was highly predatory, wasn't it?
It was high-interest buy now, pay later for people with bad credit or no credit at all. You'd buy a $50 item and pay $5 a month for 2 years, ending up paying triple the actual value. It was a financial trap. But for many low-income families, it was the only access to middle-class goods.
So Armando finds a camera setup in the catalog. A Super 8 camera and a projector. The price tag. $1,400.
In 1980 money.
Yeah.
If you adjust that for inflation, that's like asking his parents for $5,000 today. It is an insane request for a family living in the San Pablo barrio.
But they do it.
They sign the paper, they take on that massive debt.
That moment really gets me. They saw something in him that they valued more than their own financial safety. They bet on his spark.
And Armando felt the weight of that bet. He didn't just play with the camera. He went down to Chinatown in Fresno, which was the commercial hub, and he washed cars. He scrubbed tires for quarters. He hoarded those quarters in a jar to try and pay his parents back. He treated that camera like a serious investment, not a toy.
And he starts producing. He's doing stop-motion animation. He's taking Matchbox cars, crashing them together, and using actual firecrackers to simulate explosions.
Which is actually quite technical when you think about it. He's learning frame rates. He's learning lighting. If you blow up a firecracker, you have to time the shutter perfectly to catch the flash. He is self-teaching physics and optics right there in his dirt backyard.
But while he is building this incredible competence on his own, the school system is actively trying to dismantle him. We have to talk about the Fresno High incident.
This is where we see the transition from general poverty to active, targeted discrimination. Armando was a smart kid, a straight-A student, but he hung out with the neighborhood kids. One of his friends, a guy named Chimo, gets into an altercation with a teacher.
And the source says the teacher physically assaulted the student, right?
Yes. Scratched him, insulted him. And Armando, along with others, organized a protest, a walkout to demand accountability. The administration labeled it a riot, and the result was that Armando was essentially purged from the system. He was expelled and transferred to a different school.
And at this new school, he thinks, okay, I'll join the drama department. I want to learn stagecraft and production.
He walks into the class. The teacher looks at him, a Latino kid from the bad school, involved in a quote-unquote riot, and she makes an immediate judgment. She tells him right to his face, I don't think this class is for you.
Does she kick him out of the room?
Worse. She silences him. She tells him to sit in the corner of the room. She says, sit there, don't cause any trouble, and at the end of the semester, I will give you a grade.
She literally warehoused him.
Exactly. She entirely denied him the education he was there for. And for a while, he just sat there in the corner. Then he just stopped going. He went to the cafeteria to study his other subjects instead. And at the end of the term, true to her cynical word, she gave him a C just to pass him along.
That is the soft bigotry that destroys potential. It's not a slur. It's total neglect. It's telling a kid he simply doesn't exist.
But then we get the counterforce in his life, the mentor. Enter Tomas Gonzalez.
Who was Tomas?
Tomas was a local community leader, an activist, someone who had successfully navigated the higher education system. He saw Armando, he saw the straight A's, he saw the spark with the camera, and he realized that Armando's parents didn't understand what the next step was.
They didn't know what college was?
Conceptually, maybe they knew the word, but practically, no. To them, you finish high school, you get a job, you contribute to the family's survival. The idea of spending 4 more years studying and not earning was completely alien. Tomas went to their house. He sat them down at the table. He explained the long-term value of a degree.
And he did a lot more than just talk.
He wrote the check. Tomas paid for Armando's entire first year at Long Beach State. Tuition, books, dorms. He personally removed the financial barrier that would have stopped Armando cold.
So Armando gets to Long Beach. He's in film school. But the check covers school, not life.
Right. He is starving. He talks in the interview about living on a diet of milk and Twinkies because they were the cheapest possible calories he could buy. He is literally malnourished while trying to learn advanced cinematography.
Until he walks into an El Polo Loco.
He goes into a local franchise, just desperate. He asks the manager, "Can I sweep the floors? I just need food."
And this manager, who is another one of these unsung heroes in the story, looks at him. He sees the heavy backpack. He sees the hunger in his face.
And he says, "No. You don't sweep, you sit, you eat." He tells his staff, when this kid comes in, you feed him. Let him study.
It's these small, profound interventions, right? The Chinese cafe owner, the Polo Loco manager, Tomas, they are sustaining him. But now he has to actually break into the media industry. And this is where the racism gets very loud and very explicit.
He lands an internship at a cable station in Signal Hill. He's working with two close friends, Gustavo, who was also Latino, and Todd, who was African-American. They are capable. They are engineering students. But the station treats them strictly as the help.
While the white interns are touching the expensive cameras and working the soundboards, Armando and his friends are relegated to making coffee.
It all culminates in the Christmas parade incident. It's 4 in the morning. They're assigned to work the parade route. They pull into the designated production parking lot. But because they are 3 brown and black men in a car at 4 a.m., the police swarm them.
Immediate profiling.
Instant. The cops kick them out of the production lot. They say, "You don't belong here." So they have to park miles away and hike in with all their heavy gear. Because of that, they arrive exactly 7 minutes late to the crew call.
And the crew chief, the boss of the shoot, how does he react? Does he ask why they were delayed?
No questions asked. He just launches into a massive tirade. And it's not just, "Hey, you're late." It's racial slurs. He calls them lazy. He uses highly derogatory terms. He humiliates them in front of the entire production team.
That kind of moment creates a bifurcation in a person's life. You can either quit or you can get ruthlessly determined. Armando graduates. He grabs his friend Gustavo, and they go to the one place they think they will finally be judged on merit, Univision.
Spanish language television.
Yeah.
His people. He thinks, okay, the white industry doesn't want me, but Univision will absolutely see my value.
They walk into the headquarters in Burbank. They hand their polished resumes to the receptionist. They are dressed up. They are hopeful.
And as they walk out the glass double doors, Armando looks back over his shoulder. He sees the receptionist. She is holding the resumes directly over the trash can, and she just drops them in.
She didn't even pretend to file them.
She threw them away the second they turned their backs. Armando says in the interview that hurt more than the police profiling, more than the crew chief's slurs, because it was internal. It was a blatant rejection from the very community he wanted to elevate and serve.
So the front door is closed. The side door is closed. How does he actually get in?
He uses the loading dock. Literally. He looks across the street and sees a building for Bet Black Entertainment Television, which was doing contract work for ESPN at the time. And he remembers he has a trump card in his wallet.
It's not a film degree.
A Class A commercial truck driver's license.
Which he got hauling heavy pipes to pay for his living expenses during school.
Exactly. He walks into the production manager's office and says, "I see you have these massive mobile production trucks. I can drive them." He doesn't mention the film degree. He doesn't mention he wants to be a cameraman. He positions himself strictly as a laborer.
And they hire him on the spot.
They need drivers badly.
Right.
But once he is on the road, once they're on location at these huge stadiums, things start to break. The cable snaps. The satellite uplink is fuzzy, and the driver steps up and says, "Actually, I can calibrate that. I can fix the color balance on that monitor."
He Trojan horsed his way into the engineering department.
He made himself entirely indispensable. The engineers realized, wait, this truck driver knows more about broadcast tech than we do. And that brings us to the moment that truly launched his high-level career, the 1994 World Cup.
The Rose Bowl. Italy versus Sweden?
We have to set the scene physically for this one. It is the middle of summer in Pasadena. It is 120 degrees on the field. The heat radiating off the artificial turf is absolutely brutal.
And they are using Steadicams for the broadcast.
Now, for those who don't know production gear, a 90s-era Steadicam rig is not a lightweight little gimbal like you have for your phone today. It is a heavy vest, a massive spring-loaded mechanical arm, a sled, a heavy broadcast camera, and a huge block of batteries. You are wearing about 80 pounds of gear.
It's like running a marathon while wearing a medieval suit of armor.
And you have to keep the horizon perfectly level while sprinting up and down the sideline following professional athletes. The assigned operator collapses. He literally passes out cold from heat exhaustion.
The director in the truck is screaming, "We're live, we need a shot."
And Armando, the driver who has been quietly working his way up, puts on the headset. He says, "I got it." He straps into that sweat-soaked vest. He takes all 80 pounds of weight, and he shoots the rest of the game flawlessly.
That is the competence porn moment we all love in these stories. He didn't just survive the situation, he delivered the network shot.
That performance proved to everyone he was production ready. He wasn't just a tech guy, he was an elite operator. And that finally opened the door to his real dream. He didn't want to shoot sports forever. He wanted to be a war correspondent.
He wanted to be where history was actively happening.
He admired the brave combat photographers of Vietnam and El Salvador. He actually tried to go to the Gulf War with the National Guard, but the timing just didn't align. So he found a war much closer to home. He took a job with Univision. They finally hired him, ironically based in the Tijuana Bureau.
This moves us into Section 3 of our deep dive, the danger, and we are talking about the era of the Arellano Felix cartel.
The Tijuana cartel in the 90s was one of the most violent, wealthy, and powerful organizations in the entire world. They completely controlled the corridor to California. Reporting on them wasn't standard journalism, it was combat reporting.
Armando mentions that the FBI actually visited their news bureau.
They came in person to warn them. They said, "You guys are on a hit list. You are digging way too deep into cartel operations."
And they really were. There was a terrifying incident with his colleague, Carmen.
A drive-by shooting. They were out in the field reporting, and shots rang out. A bullet literally grazed Carmen's hair. We were talking millimeters from a public execution.
And what about the police? Could they get protection?
The Tijuana police at that time were largely on the payroll of the cartel, so Armando's team couldn't just call 911 for an escort. They were entirely on their own. But they kept digging. They were driven by this intense need to expose the hidden mechanisms of the drug trade.
And they found a massive mechanism. They found what they called the Disneyland mules.
This was the scoop of a lifetime. They discovered that the cartel was recruiting innocent families, often low-income families, who had never had the money for a real vacation. The cartel fixers would say, "Hey, we'll pay for you to take the kids to Disneyland. Here's a minivan, all expenses paid. Have a great weekend."
To his struggling family, it sounds like a literal dream come true.
The catch was the minivan itself. The door panels and the floorboards were packed with cocaine. Sometimes the families knew and were paid to look the other way, but often they had no idea. The method was using the innocent, completely unthreatening veneer of a family vacation to traffic millions in narcotics.
So Armando's team tracks one of these specific vans, and they catch it, or rather, they film it being intercepted, at a Border Patrol checkpoint in San Clemente.
And this is a crucial detail. San Clemente is north of the border. It's well inside California. This van had already successfully cleared the heavy international crossing at San Isidro. The footage proved that the border was highly porous. It proved the expensive sensors, and the guards were failing.
They have the footage. They have the undeniable proof. $250,000 worth of cocaine pulled out of a family van. They send the story up to Univision headquarters, expecting a massive reaction.
And this is where the story shifts from physical danger to deep moral injury. At that specific time, there was a major political battle happening in Washington.
Right.
And we want to be clear here, we're just relaying what the source material states. The narrative being pushed by certain Latino political leaders, including Henry Cisneros, who's then a high-level executive at Univision, was centered on securing more federal budget for immigration services and border infrastructure.
The core argument was, the system is working, but we need more funding to support it.
Right. But a viral news story showing that the border was actively leaking like a sieve, that the cartel was effortlessly running circles around the current multi-million-dollar system, didn't fit the political narrative they wanted to present to Congress. It was too embarrassing. Or perhaps they felt they complicated the funding request.
So the network kills the story.
Completely censored. Armando and his team are called into a meeting with executives. They aren't congratulated for risking their lives for this scoop of a decade. They are reprimanded. They're told, why are you doing this kind of reporting?
That is the moment the light just went out for him, isn't it?
He realized he was risking his life, literally dodging cartel bullets for a network that would suppress the hard truth for political expediency. The hypocrisy was just too much for his values, so he quit.
He walks away from the peak of his career. He goes back to Fresno, and this is the decompression phase. He's gone from 100 miles an hour, living on pure adrenaline, to 0. He's back in the old San Pablo neighborhood. He's doing some freelance producing for CNN and MSNBC, but he's drifting.
It's 1998. He's in his backyard one afternoon. He's unloading his truck, probably heavy Pelican cases of camera gear, cables, lights, and a neighborhood kid walks up to the chain link fence.
Just a curious kid from the barrio. Hey, mister, what's all that stuff?
Now, most stressed-out professionals would say, don't touch that, it's expensive, or just get out of here, kid. But Armando stops. He looks at the kid, and he sees himself. He remembers being that little boy looking in the window of the karate school he couldn't afford to join.
So he says, do you want to see how it works?
He invites the kid into the yard. He shows him the camera. He probably showed him the exact same arrow jump cut trick that hooked him 20 years prior in New Mexico.
And the next day, the kid comes back.
And he brings 5 friends with him. Hey, this guy in the backyard is teaching us how to make movies.
By the end of the week, there are 20 kids sitting in the dirt in his backyard.
And Armando has this massive epiphany. He looks around at these kids and realizes absolutely nothing has changed. Since he was a poor kid in the 70s, the neighborhood is still a total desert of opportunity. There are no after-school programs, no art classes, no tech access, just the streets and the gangs.
So he decides to formalize what he's doing. He partners with a woman named Nancy Marquez from Arte Americas to borrow a single room. And this is the official birth of CCAT, the Centro Comunitario de Arte Tecnología.
And the foundational philosophy he sets down on day one is radical. Everything they offer must be 100% free.
Why is he so rigid about that specific rule?
Because he knows from his own life that even a $10 monthly fee is an impossible barrier for these families. He knew that if he charged a single dime, he would instantly lose the kids who needed the center the most. He absolutely refused to be another karate school window that they could look through but never enter.
But free doesn't pay the commercial rent.
No, it doesn't. And for a long time, he ran the whole operation on fumes, volunteers, small community donations. Until another angel appears in the story, a man named Don Cho Patron.
A local businessman in Fresno.
Don Chai sees a local news report highlighting Armando's backyard film school. He calls him up. He tells him to meet him at a building, a massive 8,000 square foot facility.
That's a warehouse. That's huge.
Yeah. Armando looks at the space and thinks, this is beautiful, but I can't possibly pay the commercial lease on this place. And Don Chui just hands him the keys. He says, I bought it. You run your program. Do not worry about the rent.
That is the power of a clear, selfless mission. It actively attracts resources.
It allowed CCAT to scale immensely. It isn't just about video cameras anymore. Today, they have a full robotics lab where kids build and fly drones. They have a massive music department teaching piano and guitar. They have a vibrant folklorico dance troupe.
And I really love the program they built for the elderly in the community, Las Tortuguitas.
The Little Turtles. It's such a brilliant initiative. It's digital literacy, specifically for seniors, teaching abuelas how to use an iPad so they can finally FaceTime their grandkids back in Mexico. It's actively combating the extreme isolation of the elderly immigrant population.
And they also have a library now, thanks to a huge donation from a late friend of his, Pedro Santos.
A massive collection, not just books, but an incredible archive of vinyl records, rare Vicente Fernandez albums, oral histories, Mexican cinema history. The center is becoming a true cultural archive, not just a trade school.
But the work goes far beyond the 4 walls of the center, which brings us to Section 4, legacy and service, because they are out in the streets.
Every single year, the weekend after Thanksgiving, they do what they call the sandwich run. Volunteers make hundreds of sandwiches, pack heavy bags with thick socks, beanies, winter jackets, and they walk out to the homeless encampments, down in the river bottoms, under the highway overpasses.
And they also do the toy run.
This is visually just amazing to picture. They partner with local motorcycle clubs. Imagine 170 bikers, Harleys just roaring, riding out in a huge convoy to the poorest rural farm towns, places like Raisin City. These are isolated agricultural communities that are completely forgotten by city services. The kids out there often get absolutely nothing for Christmas.
And here comes a massive convoy of bikers led by a former cartel war correspondent bringing bags of toys.
It's closing the loop on his own childhood. But there's one specific story from the interview that I think captures the emotional core of Armando's legacy far better than the statistics. And that's the story of Jorge.
Yeah, this is the absolute tearjerker of the interview.
Jorge was an early CCAT student. He came from a really rough background like many of the kids there. He took the video production classes. He learned the technical trade from Armando. Years go by. He graduates, moves away, and Armando loses touch with him, as naturally happens with teachers and students.
Then out of the blue, Jorge calls him up. He says, "I'm giving a major talk at the university. I really want you to be there in the audience."
So Armando goes. He sits quietly in the back of the auditorium. Jorge is up on stage talking to the students about his highly successful career as a professional television producer. And right in the middle of the speech, Jorge stops, reaches under the podium, and pulls out a green velvet bag.
Yeah, from the back?
He pulls out an Emmy Award. Jorge had won a regional Emmy for his broadcast production work. He calls Armando up to the stage in front of everyone. And he tries to physically hand him the heavy gold statue. He says, "This belongs to you. I wouldn't be standing here without you."
And how does Armando react? Does he take it?
He completely refuses to take it. He tells the audience, and he tells Jorge directly, "No. We do this work specifically so that you can hold that. The definition of success isn't the shiny trophy on my shelf. The success is you holding it on yours."
That is the ultimate pure teacher mindset. It's not about creating followers to boost your own ego. It's about creating leaders who will eventually surpass you.
Armando reflects on his own childhood during the interview. He remembers lying on the floor in that roach-infested, rat-filled apartment in El Paso, praying to God. He used to pray, "Please don't let me have kids if they have to live like this." It was a prayer born of absolute despair.
And how does he view that prayer now?
He realizes the prayer was answered, just in a way he never expected. He didn't get massive corporate wealth to insulate a small family. He got the structural capacity to help 50,000 children over 27 years. He essentially became the protective father figure to an entire generation of Fresno youth.
So let's wrap this deep dive up for the listener. What is the core takeaway here? We have a story of a man who mastered the technical corporate world. He completely conquered the beast of the broadcast industry, but decided that the real meaningful work was back in the dirt neighborhood where he started.
I think it's about the concept of holding the door.
Holding the door?
Yeah. Armando had key people who cracked the heavy door open for him when he had nothing. The Chinese cafe owner in Juarez, the Polo Loco manager feeding him in college, Tomas Gonzalez writing the tuition check. He realized that his ultimate purpose in life wasn't just to walk through the door of success and let it lock behind him. His true purpose was to wedge his foot in the doorway and hold it open for the next 50,000 kids.
I really like that framing. It's active. It's not passive charity. It's structural intervention.
Absolutely. And his final advice to parents listening to the interview is incredibly simple but powerful. He says, hug your children. Teach them their cultural roots. He firmly believes that family connection and identity is the strongest armor they need to survive a hostile world.
If you are listening to this right now and you want to support this incredible work, because remember, CCAT is still entirely powered by the community and takes no government grants, you can visit ccatfresno.org. That's ccatfresno.org.
They are doing the hard daily work on the ground that the system completely fails to do.
And a huge thank you to the original source interview, Sabiduría Para Tu Día con Álvaro Martínez, for capturing and preserving this vital story.
It's an incredibly important piece of oral history.
So here is my final challenge to you, the listener, to mull over today. You might not have an Emmy Award or a war correspondent's thrilling resume, but you have a skill. You know how to fix a complex carburetor or code in Python or perfectly bake a loaf of bread. Who is the kid in your own neighborhood standing by the fence right now just waiting for you to look over and say, do you want to see how this works?
Make the offer. Open the door.
Thanks for taking this deep dive with us. We'll see you next time.
Take care, everyone.